This is my lap dog. This is Harlow. Harlow is a male. Yes, I know. He's a male. He's a little over 2. He is a Merle. That's his color. There's 8 colors actually, of Danes, and this is a Merle Dane, and he's my 4th Dane.
This is Harlow, a Great Dane. Great Danes are among the largest dogs in the world, and we're going to find out all about them today on NSK9. Right? So why Danes?
Once you have a Dane, you're addicted. It's like having a child in the house. You can't ignore. Do you remember those years when you were on the phone and you were talking to somebody and you had like 2-3-year-old and they came up and they were like, the moment you picked up the phone, they were there. Well, this is like a Dane. You know, they have such presence. You can't ignore them. Everything is big. Their personalities are big. Their presence is big. It's more than owning a dog. It's just like having a child in the house.
A very large child.
A very large child, yeah. He weighs 72 kilos. Danes tend to grow up this way for the first 1.5 to 2 years. And then after 2, in my experience, they grow out this way.
Okay.
So, like I said, this is my 4th Dane, and my experience is around 4 or 5 is when they're their biggest.
Okay.
And I expect that around that time, he'll probably be, I would say, probably about 85 kilos, 90 kilos.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how old is he now?
He turned 2 in March.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
There you go.
2 in May, pardon me.
2 in May.
May.
All right.
Yeah. My first Dane, I was 5, and I was going to Truro with my grandmother. And we were driving along Victoria Road. And I saw a man with a Harlequin Dane walking it off leash. 5. And I said, Oma, I want that dog. And I never forgot it. And then when I got to a point in my life where I could have a Dane, that's what I did. So I've had Danes now for 28 years, and one after the next, after the next.
So this is my dog, the Guinness. My name's Steve Logan. I've had him now for, come here again. I've had him now for almost 5 years. It'll be 6 in March. He was sold by the breeder a couple times, and for whatever reason he came back, and I had just split up with my wife at the time, and a friend of mine had him to give me, and him and I have been inseparable ever since. He goes everywhere with me.
Now, to go everywhere with you, such a large dog,
Yeah.
that must bring some challenges with it.
Well, I had a Jeep. I no longer have a Jeep. I have a big truck with a huge back that he sits in. Like, he's got the whole back of the truck. So, yeah, it was hard. He couldn't come with me every time I had the Jeep because he just crammed in the back. It just wasn't good enough.
Yeah, those are...
Oh! When he stands up on his hind legs, he's over 6.5 feet tall.
Wow.
So, and right now he's been running around a lot because it's summer, but he's only 150 pounds right now. We just had him at the vet today, so he weighed 150 today, but over the summer he was 170.
Great Danes are also known as German Mastiffs. They descend from the hunting dogs of the Middle Ages. Now, the Great Dane is not officially the largest dog in the world. That title belongs to the Irish Wolfhound. But it is a Great Dane that holds the world record of the largest individual dog. The Great Dane is in fact a descendant of the Irish Wolfhound. They were used to hunt bear, boar, and deer in the royal courts, often staying the night in the royal bedchambers. They are common in popular culture. Scooby-Doo, a Great Dane. Marmaduke, also a Great Dane. Astro from the Jetsons is also a Great Dane, as are many others. The dogs make regular appearances in movies, television, and in books.
It's called Dale's Danes, and it's on Facebook. And I followed him on Facebook, and then he put out his first book, and I bought his first book. It's too quiet. Like, what's your Dane up to, right? And sure enough. And anyways, his second book, I can't wait. It's coming out. It's already out. They can just lope and go, and they would literally exhaust their prey, is what they would do. But then when you have the 1700s come along, and you start to have, industrialization and the rise of a middle class, most dogs were still feral, and the legend goes that the Dane was bred to be an indoor dog when most dogs were still feral, to show that wealth and status, that the middle class, that you could afford to feed a dog when most people couldn't. And that's why, when you see old pictures of Danes, you see them around a fireplace, you see them lying on a floor, you see them around a table, but you don't necessarily see them outside. And I go to in my past, I've gone to a lot of third world countries, and it's funny because it's one of the first signs of an emerging middle class actually is dogs as pets.
This is my first dog, and he eats 2 50-pound bags a month. Plus, I give him some raw food and stuff like that too. So everybody else tells me that's a lot of food, but I don't have anything.
You don't have anything to compare to.
I don't have anything to compare to.
So your first dog?
My first dog, yeah.
Did you grow up with dogs or anything?
No.
So your first dog is a really large breed.
Yeah. He's just awesome. Like, I don't know, he's very affectionate, and that tail is just like a whip. He's dented my fridge. Literally dented my fridge with his tail. It's very hard. It's all bone, right? And I don't have anything on tables or coffee tables or anything like that, because he used to knock them off. Like, you got to watch your glasses. If you have a glass on the counter or something, he can rest his head on my kitchen counter.
You can tell when a Dane's been in your kitchen. We who own Danes, we call it counter surfing. So you got food on your counter, but they're not food motivated, but that doesn't mean they're not interested in knowing that what's on your counter, and you can tell they've been there because they're slobbery. So you look on your counter and you can see a long line of slobber. And you know that
It's like a slug line.
It's like a slug line, right? And they started here and they were sniffing all the way down. They didn't touch it, they didn't take it because they're not food motivated, but they were sliding their face down.
Mainly it's due to conformation. So there are breeds that are really good swimmers, like our Lab Retrievers or Chesapeake Bay Retrievers, Newfoundland dogs. They typically have webbed feet, strong legs, water repellent coats, thick tail, which acts like a rudder. So they're really good swimmers, but with that being said, some still aren't. Swimming, like with people, is not an innate skill to have. So some dogs, they have a bit of a learning curve. When you get into other breeds that typically have a larger chest in relation to maybe a more narrow hind end, deeper chest, shorter legs, and typically we see those with our shorter snouted dogs. Those are the guys that typically struggle a little bit with swimming. And again, not to say they can't, but you want to be extra precautious with them. So if you have access to a pool or water, maybe block off their access or make sure you're with them, or even consider a life jacket to help them out.
Like, if I take him to Canadian Tire with me all the time, and if I go for 5 minutes, I'm there for an hour, because everybody wants to see him, everybody wants to pet him, everybody just wants to ask questions about him, because he's just you don't see a lot of Great Danes around, and plus, he's just so gentle, and everybody's just amazed to see him and think that he's that big and so easy to get along with. So, he's just standing there, just hanging out.
If I had a quarter for, do you got a saddle? Can you ride that thing? How big's that dog? I'd be rich and retired. It's not a common breed, so people are very interested. I try to raise my Danes as ambassadors because people, sometimes without thinking, because they're such a unique breed, they'll just come up and they'll touch the dog, or they'll send their children over. So, you in order to have this breed, I really think that you should know a lot about dogs, because people are very curious and their children are very curious. They're one-person dogs. They love their family, but they have their person.
Okay.
And they're quite calm. They're bred to be indoors, so they're quite calm dogs. Having said that, if you looked around my house, you'd see the goober. So they require a lot of housekeeping.
And you carry around a towel. So tell me about the towel.
So that's the other thing. He drools quite often and quite a bit. So I carry my towel around so that anybody that pets him doesn't have to deal with the drool. So, and he likes it, and he thinks I'm playing with him, but he likes it, I think.
So, and you were telling me about the walls and stuff at your...
Oh, yeah. He drools so much, and then he shakes, and his jowls just spray the walls. So, it's quite the task. He doesn't shed a whole lot, except twice a year, right? When he gets his winter coat or when he sheds it. So, that's not a big factor, but the drool is the biggest factor.
So you're not picking up hair, you're just picking up drool.
Yeah, pretty much. You just got to wash your walls quite often, You could get away with not vacuuming, but you got to wash your walls. See, you can't do this with Kenny.
No, that would be hard, although I see him coming over and
he's jealous.
Wishing you would, pick him up.
He's very jealous. He is very jealous, aren't you, buddy?
So they're not for people who can't deal with dog slobber, because they are a slobbery dog.
Yeah, because you got to deal with that everywhere.
Oh,
right?
If you look on my ceiling, there's slobber on my ceiling, literally. Literally, I can pick out 4 spots sitting right here.
Now, you work at home.
I do.
What's it like working at home with a dog that isn't just going to get underfoot, but...
So, I usually sit right where you are, where I work. If it's a good day, he'll put his head down on this end. If it's a bad work day, he puts his head on my lap, and he pushes on my arm. I think he's giving me carpal tunnel. He always, they know that they're being spoken of. They're attention hounds. He will photobomb, Zoom bomb all the time. Yesterday I was on a call with one of the VPs of the big banks, and I'm talking to her, and then all of a sudden he's pushing my head out of the way so he can see what's on the screen, I think. Anyway, she goes, "Oh my God, I love your dog." And there he is, photobombing my Zoom call. It's interesting though. My second Dane was a fawn, and he was a beautiful, calm boy. He was each Dane has their own personality, like children do. And I was up in Moncton, and I had a new client up in Moncton, and they were, I'm a consultant, and sometimes people are a little standoffish with consultants because you're a lot of money.
Yep.
You're a lot of money. And I had been staying at the Beau Séjour, but I was leaving that day, and I had to go back and see my client, but it was 42 degrees. And I pulled up at my clients, and I said, "Look, I got a problem. I had to check out of the hotel, and I cannot leave my dog in the car." And the client said, "Look, all 3 of us own dogs. Bring your dog in." And I'll tell you, I brought my dog in, and it changed the meeting, the dynamics of the meeting. And that one dog in particular, I brought him, he was a very special dog, literally into meetings thereafter. Every meeting. He would go into meetings in the buildings right downtown Halifax. I would bring him into those meetings because a dog can change the dynamics. Most people like dogs, and people go from, you're a consultant, prove to me your worth, to, "Oh my God, you brought your dog." And I was doing training one time, and actually the owner of the business made me, she said, "Where's Odin?" And I said, "Well, Odin's home." And this was out in Lakeside. And she said, she's like, "Well, can you go get him?" And I said, "Michelle, you've got 42 people on the clock waiting for me to train." And I said, "That's money." And she said, "Well, how long will it take you?" I said, "Well, 40 minutes by the time I go from Lakeside to Bedford and back again." And she said, "Yeah, we'll wait." So I drove all the way to Bedford, got my Great Dane, and came back, all because she had promised everybody that my Dane would be in the training. They're very happy if they have a couch, and they would be very happy for, only a little bit, I don't know what he sees, only a little bit, the camera, only a little bit of exercise. But, good health says he should be exercised a couple times a day. But honestly, if he could get away with it, he would do 1 walk a day and sleep for probably 21 hours and then spend the other 3 hours eating. They're a fussy dog to eat, in my experience.
Oh, really?
Yeah, all 3 of mine have been fussy. I free feed them, which means I always leave food in a dish. They feed when they want. Most Danes I've met are not well food motivated. So when I grew up, I had a lab. A lab would eat anything that wouldn't walk away or run away from it. Shoes, newspapers, dog food. A Dane is not necessarily, not all of them are food motivated. So in my house, if I drop a piece of steak on the floor, most likely I'm the person that's gonna have to pick it up. They're not food motivated dogs.
Interesting.
Which makes for interesting training.
It does, because how do you train a dog?
You gotta train a Dane. You can't train it with necessarily a piece of hot dog or a piece of meat. You gotta train it with love and positive affirmation. So the cat is hilarious. Her name is Grace, AKA Gracifer, as in Lucifer. And my favorite, not my favorite thing, one of the things I'll say to her, you can hear me saying, is, Grace, leave the dog alone. Grace, don't touch the dog. Grace, don't draw blood whatever you do, which is hilarious because Grace weighs less than 2 pounds.
So as a puppy is when we generally start our vaccine series. So pups are started around 6 to 8 weeks, and we booster every 4 weeks until they reach, or they're just past the 16-week mark. After that, we usually booster a year later, and then the core vaccines roll over to every 3 years. With our optional or non-core vaccines, they are risk-based, so it depends on what your exposure risk is, whether or not they make sense for your pet. So those include Bordetella for kennel cough, leptospirosis, and the Lyme vaccine. Those ones, we start them, we booster in 3 to 4 weeks, and then they remain yearly vaccines. In Nova Scotia, we do see all of those issues, so we generally recommend all 3 of those, although they still remain optional. And if you have a dog that really goes outside, maybe that would change, what we're going to choose for your pet.
What advice would you give to somebody who's thinking about getting a Great Dane?
Get one with small jowls. No, just know what you're getting into. I mean, like, he's a great dog. Like, he's a great apartment dog. He doesn't.
Which you wouldn't think, right?
No, like, I'll work shift work and I'll work all night shift and I'll come home in the morning, and when I get off in the morning, he'll go back to sleep and sleep all day while I'm sleeping. Yeah, he'll go get up once or twice to go to the bathroom or whatever, but he'll sleep the whole day.
Wow.
And then, so it's good that way, whereas he doesn't need to be walked every day, which I wasn't expecting. I figured.
Because you'd think with a big dog,
you
need lots of exercise.
Yeah, but he really doesn't.
So they're not cheap dogs to have.
They are an expensive dog to have, and I tell people who say, "Oh, I can't wait to get a Dane." I tell them that everything is more. They're the size of a man, right? He's 72 kilos. He's the size of a man. He eats as much as a man. Hey, and also, when you take him to the vet, right? It's not a couple pills. It's a lot of pills. So everything is more expensive at the vet. You can't buy, a small dog bed. You got to buy a big dog bed. He has his own bed.
A very big dog bed.
Upstairs, he has a twin-size bed. Actually, he sleeps on a twin size because he's too big. So they're an expensive. Everything is extra big. I think one is a caution thing. A dog is a dog is a dog. I love my dog. I love my dog like a child, but still it's a dog. Please be careful sending your children over. Like, don't, maybe ask before your children come and run over.
Because they can also get knocked over by a dog
right
this size, like even unintentionally.
Right, and that's actually the biggest danger, is that the Dane will, they're well aware of their size. They're a breed that don't naturally jump up. You teach them to jump up, in my experience, but it is a dog. It might be a hot day. The dog might be very playful, and you don't want your dog to, to knock over someone's child. And I think the other thing is that this is an expensive dog to own, so because they're one owner dogs, before you rush in and get a Dane, one, know your breeder, or go to a rescue. But it's an expensive breed to own. It's a lot of food. It's a lot of medicine when they're at the vet. They're big costs to owning these dogs.
Funny seeing him play with the little one, though.
Yeah.
Eh?
Yeah.
It's such a size difference, but they both think they're like.
Yeah, and this little guy's name is Moose.
It's a little bit like a small horse.
Yeah, it's actually funny because there's two horses here, and when the first time I brought him out, the horses wouldn't eat for a week. They were scared to death of him. They didn't know what he was, so they just stared at him. But yeah, now he's good, and they're used to him now.
Your mother's something else.
Oh, I know.
Just, I didn't expect him to be as loving and as needy. He's very needy. Well, as you can tell, he just wants to lean against you. He's very needy. He doesn't want to be away from you. Like my boys and stuff, he just always wants to be around somebody. He's curious, very curious.
You really are, aren't you?
But he's I'm not even, he just doesn't even leave. He just stay here all day with me. Very loyal, very loyal.
What's your favorite part?
Tell you the truth, just hanging with them, because you just sit there and they're just always with you. Like you sit there and he's got his head on me. I watch TV. He's got his head on me. I walk. He's right beside me. They're a perfect companion, and they love everything. Not necessarily that camera right now. He's kind of scared of it, and that's probably the biggest misconception. People often think a Dane, it must be ferocious. The joke is that they're so big, but they're afraid of cats.
He's under your feet all the time because he just wants to be right next to you, right? He doesn't even want to leave here. And so whenever I'm doing something at home or wherever, he just kind of gets in the way. But I wouldn't want a small dog. I really wouldn't.
What is it about a big dog that attracts you?
Well, I love the fact that I don't have to bend over to pet him, right? And he's just right here, and he's very docile, and he doesn't bark. Small dogs are yappy. He's very quiet and easy to take care of.
I will always have a Dane. Always have a Dane. And I think everybody should too.
Sit, down, stay. Well, those commands are well known to anybody who's spent time training their dog. But those commands also form the basis of a growing sport, the sport of rally and obedience. That's next time on NSK9.
So I think there's a lot of people that would be surprised that obedience is a sport.
Yes, because it sounds like it's strict and you have to obey, but it's a sport and it's a fun sport. When you turn their brain on, there's nothing like it. The reward that you get with training your dog and the light comes on, it's incredible.